nereden hocam başlıyor? Sularda geçiyor ama. Hayır aslında bilmiyorsun. İsmini bulamam diye çok böyle bakmam diyorsun. Dolayısıyla da çok önemli yok. Burası aslında diye bir
Listen to this speaker talking about his home city. I'm going to talk to you today about my home city, which is Liverpool. I was born and raised there, and that makes me a Liverpudlian. Liverpool was founded in the 13th century in 1207 by King John, and in its early days it was used as a port to send soldiers to Ireland. Liverpool lies on the River Mersey, at the mouth of the River Mersey, and so it's always been a port. For many years, in fact for 3 centuries, Liverpool survived largely on fishing and farming, and it remained small with a population of less than 1,000 until the mid-17th century. From around 1660 onwards, the town began to grow in importance. First, cargoes arrived from America, the population grew rapidly, and by the early 18th century was the second biggest city in England, thriving mainly on the slave trade. In 1799, 45,000 slaves were carried from Liverpool to the Americas and from Africa. The first overseas consulate of the United States of America was founded in Liverpool at around that time. The slave trade was banned, and Liverpool became the port for the import of raw cotton and the export of textiles. Liverpool became a city in 1880. The University of Liverpool, one of the oldest in England, was founded in 1881. By 1900, Liverpool had a population of 700,000, including a very large Irish community. It was in the early 20th century that Liverpool's Anglican Cathedral began to be built, and it is now the largest 20th century Gothic cathedral. There is now also a Catholic cathedral in Liverpool, and Liverpool is one of 2 cities outside London that has 2 cathedrals. During the Second World War, Liverpool was the control centre for the Battle of the Atlantic. Many ships went out and were sunk during the Second World War, and many naval ships were escorting the ships carrying essential supplies to Britain during the Second World War from America. In 1962, and this was a big year for Liverpool, the Beatles began to be famous. And of course, Liverpool is always associated with the Beatles. A bit earlier than that, 1952. Since those mid-20th century days, Liverpool has re-established its arts, music, and literature. And in 2008, Liverpool became the European capital of culture. We have famous poets there. Some of the most famous poets in Britain are Liverpool poets, and there are now over 500,000 inhabitants living in the city, which also has the famous tunnel linking it under the Mersey with Birkenhead. So I'm a great lover of Liverpool, having been born and raised there, and I hope that some of you will visit Liverpool one day.
Okay, that's the end of the first part. Also, I will give you 30 seconds. Okay, let's start.
Listen to the people talking about teachers. Complete the summary with appropriate words. Write one word in each gap.
Right, talking about teachers, Anita, have you any memorable person in your life? Any teacher who has made an impact on you?
Interesting question. I have met a lot of teachers in my life. Some of them were quite exemplary and others were not so. The time when I started taking the lessons on how to play guitar, acoustic guitar. And it's quite controversial. Didn't pay attention to me as a learner, I should say. What he did was just telling me which frets to put, which fingers on, which strings to pull, and that's it actually.
Did you study at school or was it a special school?
Yeah, it was a music school next to my house, and it was actually my decision to start taking up these lessons. I persuaded my parents to buy me, and I was quite enthusiastic about this.
And why is this person memorable to you?
I will tell you. Well, it actually disappointed me a lot. The manner he taught me the guitar, and I was quite mature to understand that something was wrong with the way he was teaching me. Because I couldn't understand the notes. I could only play the music mechanically, and that's it. So I decided to drop out of school and started practicing music at home.
Are you still in contact with this person?
No, I'm not in contact. And what I want to say, why he influenced me, it didn't discourage me. Just on the contrary, he stimulated me to go on and to be determined and persistent in what I like. So he did influence me in that sense. What about you, Alex?
Well, I've got a slightly more positive experience of a teacher who influenced me. I was in the 8th grade, I think it was in 1982, a year later, in fact. And it was at the time when I was interested in cinema, so I went to a club, basically a cinema club for children, and there was a teacher, trainer, coach, whose name was Albert, but he was a professional philosopher, basically. So what happened is that although he taught us how to operate cameras, how to make films, he also taught a lot about philosophy, and we wanted to know something about that. So he was the first person to introduce me to great philosophers of the West and the East, like Hegel, like Nietzsche, but also, of course, the Indian philosophers. So I actually learned quite a lot from him, both professionally and personally. And that was to me basically my first strong spiritual experience of a young adult, so to speak.
Very interesting. And do you still keep in touch with him?
Unfortunately, no, because that was my two or three last years at school. Then I left school, and then I basically lost touch with him because he moved to Russia. And he died, I think, I don't remember exactly. I think soon afterwards. So I think that was in summertime, but he moved to, I think, Tula or some other city, I don't remember which.
I see.
Okay, once more. You ready?
Talking about teachers, Anita, have you any memorable person in your life? Any teacher who has made an impact on you?
Interesting question. I have met a lot of teachers in my life. Some of them were quite exemplary and others were not so. I can recall one of my teacher whose name was Marat, and he was my music teacher. And it was, let me think, 25 years ago, gosh. It was the time when I started taking the lessons on how to play guitar, acoustic guitar. And it's quite a controversial example, I should say, because Marat is a notation and all these things. What he did was just telling me which frets to put which fingers on and which strings to pull, and that's it actually.
Did you study at school, or was it a special school?
Yeah, it was a music school next to my house, and it was actually my decision to start taking up these lessons. I persuaded my parents to buy me a guitar, and I was quite enthusiastic about this.
But why is this person memorable to you?
I will tell you. Well, it actually disappointed me a lot. The way, the manner he taught me the guitar, and I was quite mature to understand that something was wrong with the way he was teaching me. Because I couldn't understand the notes. I could only play the music mechanically, and that's it. So, I decided to drop out of school, and what I want to say, why he influenced me, it didn't discourage me. Just on the contrary, he stimulated me to go on and to be determined and persistent in what I like. So he did influence me in that sense. What about you, Alex?
Well, of course, a slightly more positive experience of a teacher who influenced me. I was in the 8th grade, I think it was in 1982, or a year later, in fact. And it was at the time when I was interested in cinema, so I went to a club, basically a cinema club for children, and there was a teacher, trainer, coach, whose name was Albert, but he was a professional philosopher, basically. So it happened that although he taught us how to operate cameras, how to make films, he also talked a lot about philosophy, and we wanted to know something about that. So he was the first person to introduce me to great philosophers of the West and the East, like Hegel, like Nietzsche, but also, of course, the Indian philosophers. So I actually learned quite a lot from him, both professionally and personally. And that was to me basically my first strong spiritual experience of a young adult, so to speak.
Very interesting. And do you still keep in touch with him?
Unfortunately, no, because that was my two or three last years at school when I left school. And then I basically lost touch with him because he moved to Russia. And he died, I think, I don't remember exactly, I think soon afterwards. So I think, that was in Samarkand, but he moved to, I think, Tula or some other city, I don't remember which.
Also 30 seconds to focus on the third part. Ama Türkçe izlerken dedim de yaptım. Sigurno już mi tylko
Listen to the story about the European language and choose the correct answer.
The Canoic Success Story by Linda Baxter. In the first lesson of any language course, you'll probably learn a mini dialogue like this. You'll find the translation at the end of this article. But can you guess what it means? A. Dit daar, van de gennis. B. In pointer. Mas. Agenesti. What you probably can't guess is the language of the exchange above. It's actually Cornish, a language that is listed as extinct in the UNESCO Red Book on Endangered Languages, but which has experienced a remarkable revival in recent years. What is Cornish? It's Irish, Welsh, and Breton. When Britain was invaded by the Anglo-Saxons in the 5th century AD, the native Celtic people were pushed to the west and north of the country, and the language that they spoke developed differently in these separate areas. Some Celts left the country completely and went to the west of France, where their language became known as Breton. Cornish, Gaelic, is the language that people spoke in Cornwall, Kernow, which is the county in the extreme southwest of England. Welsh and Breton are its nearest relatives, and the three languages have a lot of similarities. When did the language die out? It really depends on your definition of died out. The story goes that the last person who spoke Cornish and no English was a woman called Dolly Pentreath. She died in 1777, and some people say that the language died with her. But of course there were still people who spoke Cornish as a native language, even if they also knew English. And their children learned some Cornish from them, even if they spoke English most of the time. The number of speakers got smaller and smaller in the 20th century. What do you mean by Cornish revival? At the beginning of the 20th century, that Cornish died with Dolly Pentreath. And this knew a lot, admittedly, but a lot better than 100 years ago. And the numbers are growing every year. Some children now grow up bilingual, and the language is offered as an option in some schools. You can even study the language, but it's a start. There are books in the language film industry. The modern words are easy to guess. For example, airplane for aeroplane, and pizza for pizza. Some words are similar to English: face, face, train, train, and head through Britain this morning. And remember, if you see sterile debris on a hotel door, it isn't the name of the manager, it's Cornish for dining room.